grassroots organizations in, say, the tri-state area that are already being funded, receiving, say, federal money, that are working on some of these issues, particularly around, men and women coming home from prison, doing things like, offering people, internships and other kinds of things. But again, I go back to the real work needs to be done in the community. The real work really needs to be done in the community.
So we're going to let Kent actually ask the last question because he started it and he had his hand raised.
Okay.
Well, a good friend of mine grew up in the South Bronx, and while he's actually a student at NYU, none of the kids that he grew up with, and not only is he the only one in college, but none of them have even left Mott Haven. So I would constantly hear stories about these kids getting into trouble, and so one of them actually got locked up in the last week for knocking out a rookie cop who decided to first give him dig his hands through his crack. And this kid is also, not only has he been shot, but he became a father in the last year. So I'm sure that you know as well as anyone that people don't change unless they have to, be it through something they experience such as yourself or through hitting rock bottom. But my question to you is, how do you hope to reach people and drive a wedge in this type of life without them actually experiencing something along those lines?
The thing that I'm real clear on, man, is we working with groups all over the country and even groups outside of the country. We're just trying to promote a consistent message of change. And what we find is without that message, because here's the thing, right? Looking at the example, listening to the example that you gave, people got to know when they're ready to change that there is hope, right? And that there are avenues and that there are organizations that they can get connected to. And I think what happens is, as you guys get out there and y'all start doing this work, you're gonna realize that this work is very, very difficult because the challenges are so massive. But at the end of the day, we're using a number of different kinds of approaches, whether it's social media, whether it's literature in terms of some of the books and publications that we've either written or co-authored, and really just trying to train and mobilize people to be, for lack of, and this might sound corny, beacons of hope. There's got to be a hope message in that neighborhood that you're talking about. Because, like, in a lot of the neighborhoods, nobody's really talking about, yo, you can do this. You can do this. You don't hear that message. You don't hear that message. All right, so you got locked up. So what? You can turn that thing around. So there's got to be a consistent hope message. I mean, and that's what we're trying to do, man. Because here's the deal. We don't have a choice. We already incarcerate more people than anybody else on the planet. We don't have a choice. Because I think we're beginning to realize, most people should realize, everybody you lock up, they coming home. They gonna come home. And so what are they coming home to?
I think that's a good place. I'm going to, Dr. Garfield is here. I thought maybe she'd like to say a few words before I make a few commentary, and we thank David.
Well, I think before I say anything, I think we should thank David. Just two comments. One, to emphasize what you have already said so eloquently. Think about this. Think about, in terms of African Americans, we represent about 13% of the total U.S. population of 300 million people. Black men represent 6%, roughly 6.5% of that population. Young black men, 18 to 34, represent about roughly 3% of a total population of 300 million people. In our state prisons, you can go and you will find that the black population, young black men in state prisons, can represent anywhere from 40 to 60%. okay? A population that is virtually 3% of the total population. So the question that we have to struggle with is, why is that? Why do we have a tiny minority who's representing a majority of our imprisoned population? It is very important to become active. People's lives matter. People's lives count. We cannot throw away people. And I strongly support what has been said about becoming involved. And there are many different avenues for doing that. And I also, this may not be the best political thing to say, I also encourage you, because you, many of you, maybe not all of you, are his constituent. I strongly encourage you to plug in and to plug in ways that get President Obama to make some definitive policy moves around mass incarceration in our society. You are his constituent, and you should take advantage of that.
Okay.
Thank you.
So I would like to thank David once again. I also want to thank you for coming. David's lecture is supported by the Prisoner Reentry Institute and the Pinkerton Fellowship. And you have several of the Pinkerton Fellows here, and they are going to be hosting an information session for you to find out more about the Pinkerton Fellowship directly after, at the end of the hallway in room 521. And for those of you, and many of you I know because you're in my class, I would like to create the bridge or echo some of the comments that David has raised and Dr. Garfield has raised around this notion of justice. This is a part of the Black Men in Justice series, and in large part, David has been invited here because his work, he is a representation of a population that has been so heavily incarcerated, and his work is around justice, right? And for those of you who are here at John Jay College of Criminal Justice, one of the things that I think is important, and Dr. Garfield ends on this point, which is, where will you enact your notion of justice? Will it be, where will it be? How do you see justice, and how will you be just in this society that is so terribly unjust to so many of us? I want you not to relinquish the notion that justice is possible, right? Is that embedded in these walls that you spend your days, right? Important in this conversation is not just doing the so-called right thing, but thinking through, acting upon this notion of justice. So I want to thank you. Next week, Dr. Leon Caldwell will be here, and he will be talking about the health and well-being of those who are criminal justice involved. And I urge you to come back. I urge you to, once again, come. You can get food, ask hard questions, and learn more about the fellowship. Thank you, and thank you.